Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us for KREM 2 News First at 4. I'm Mark Hanrahan. Breaking news, a Spokane police officer is on administrative leave after police say someone made sexual misconduct allegations against the officer. The department says it was made aware of those allegations just yesterday. They aren't saying much, but here's what we do know right now. When the Spokane Police Department learned of the allegations, they immediately contacted the Spokane County Sheriff's Office. Now the county is investigating the case. Sergeant Terry Pruniger with SPD says the officer will stay on administrative leave until the investigation is complete. The officer's name is not being released at this time. Some more breaking news now. The teen who made threats to students at Lewis and Clark High School will soon learn his fate. We are still waiting to learn Ryan Lee's sentence. He is charged with 1 count of harassment. Lee took a plea deal after a judge decided to throw out his confession to police. He entered an Alford plea, which means he did not plead guilty, but acknowledges there is enough evidence to convict him. Before the sentencing, parents of the victim said they were not happy with the plea deal and called it a slap on the wrist. KREM 2's Amanda Rowley is in the courtroom right now. She'll have the family's emotional statements coming up on KREM 2 News at 5 tonight. Spokane Park Rangers say they are busier than ever, and not necessarily in a good way. They say they've received more safety calls this year than in previous years. KREM 2's Shayna Waldtower found out what's behind the spike in calls and what the city is now doing about it.
The city says it's gotten about 5,500 calls just this year reporting incidents in its about 87 parks. While they couldn't give us specific numbers, they say this is a considerable amount more than previous years. But this increase in calls mainly comes from how much Riverfront Park has grown and the increased number of people visiting the area. The Ranger team is now at 15 members, where 3 years ago it was at about 10.
We determined that beyond just the safety at Riverfront Park, that our other city parks also need an additional group of folks that are kind of looking out for things.
One of the team's main goals now is enforcing something called H1. It's an ordinance that keeps people from using park property for things it wasn't designed for, like...
So you can't set up a gazebo in the Red Wagon or some other sort of structure that would prevent people from being able to use it for what it was intended for.
But this also includes issues of people camping in the park. Worthington says they've gotten calls about people who are homeless staying near the riverbank or in bathrooms.
Occasionally we do have to respond to reports of camps, and usually what that looks like is if we see that there is a structure built in a park, maybe along a riverbank, we'll try to contact those folks, see what's going on, what's causing that issue. That way we can kind of guide them to different resources.
He says they've had reports of people sleeping in the bathrooms, a conversation he says typically isn't more than...
It's a discussion of, hey, you know, you've been in here for a while, people aren't able to use the restroom. Is there somewhere that we could get you where you could still stay warm, or whatever the case may be?
As for sleeping in the park, Worthington says it is allowed as long as they aren't causing any disturbances.
We're here to help them. We're not just there to, ruin somebody's day.
He says as the winter season approaches, they'll still continue their patrols, but the Rangers will mainly just be responding to community calls. In Spokane, Shayna Waldtower, KREM 2 News.
Some more breaking news at this hour. There's a crash impacting I-90 right now. Westbound I-90 is closed at the east end of the Vantage Bridge due to that crash. There is currently no detour available and no estimated time for reopening, so drivers will need to use an alternative route. We'll keep you posted on when it does reopen. Dozens of people filled the Okanogan County Fairgrounds this afternoon to remember Okanogan County Assistant Fire Chief Christian Johnson. Several speakers, including his stepdaughter, honored him at that memorial service today. She said Johnson always made people feel good and they gravitated to him. She called him her rock, and she says she never remembered being mad at him. Johnson died after being burned over 60% of his body while fighting the spring coulee fire. His body was returned home over the weekend. Search crews are back out today trying to find a missing Moses Lake woman. Rachel Lackaduck disappeared in the North Cascades last week during a hike. Crews narrowed down their search today to a specific tree line. They are searching by ground and by air. They've already postponed tomorrow's search due to anticipated bad weather. According to a Facebook post from her mom, crews still consider it a search and rescue mission. However, authorities say the chances of survival are slim. Well, it almost feels like spring across the inland Northwest today, but soak it in right now while you can because it's about to get chilly this weekend. Meteorologist Michelle Boss in for Tom Sherry tonight with more on that, Michelle.
That's right. We're having a lot of ups and downs in the temperature department this October, and the next day is going to be one of the big ups, but then we're going to have a big drop for the weekend. Let's take a look at our satellite and radar right now, and we've had partly sunny skies today. Kind of had a band of high clouds move through, so Coeur d'Alene seeing a little bit more overcast right now, North Idaho, but plenty of sunshine from Spokane on westward. No rainfall anywhere. The next 12 hours look pretty quiet. We'll see mostly clear skies. Temperatures falling into the mid-40s. We should be bottoming out around 40 degrees tomorrow morning. Plenty of sunshine to start the day. It is going to be windy, so just keep that in mind. Wind gusts 35 to 45 miles per hour. A slight chance of a shower Friday afternoon, but look at the highs, lower 60s. That'll be our last mild day this month. Temperatures drop into the upper 40s for Saturday and Sunday. A few more clouds on Saturday, but partly cloudy on Sunday and 46.
Thank you, Michelle. Meantime, in California, wildfire is forcing hundreds of people from their homes in Northern California. Wind and dry conditions are fueling the flames, which are burning out of control in wine country. KREM 2's Whitney Ward joins us live in the studio right now, and it looks like those fires are also impacting electricity in the area.
Yeah, it's a huge impact across the board. The wildfires started racing through Sonoma County overnight, driven by winds up to 70 miles an hour. This is actually live video right now. You can see this has been moving through the hills and the canyons there, and it is completely involved in this neighborhood. We just saw a few moments ago as they panned down. Many of these houses are actively on fire right this minute. Thick clouds are hovering over wine country today. Airplanes have been trying to put out the flames from above, but it is a big, massive ordeal. The fire now burning more than 10,000 acres. Authorities ordered all 900 people who live in Geyserville to evacuate. And in the nearby town of Jimtown, flames destroyed at least 3 homes already. With harvest time just now ending, some vineyards are now on fire.
Vineyards can definitely be a good fire break. They don't have a lot of ground fuel.
These conditions are multifaceted. It's not just dry weather, it's high winds, low humidity.
So the local utility company has cut power to that area to prevent the electrical grid from sparking even more fires. The governor there says Southern California's utility is now starting to follow suit. Santa Ana winds have been gathering strength in the southern part of the state. About 170 firefighters are gathered in Pacific Palisades, ready to launch right now. So far, 2 more small fires are also burning in Southern California, and fire officials are hoping to keep them from blowing up as well. Of course, we'll continue to track the latest on these fires. For now, Mark, back to you.
All right, Whitney, thank you very much. More than 1,900 registered nurses at Sacred Heart Medical Center are voting on whether or not to strike. So this is video from a previous strike. They're calling for what they call safer staffing and fair benefits to make sure they can take care of their patients and their own families, they said. The Washington State Nurses Association, that's the union representing nurses, says Providence is trying to force workers to take big cuts to their benefits, even though they say the company is seeing record profits. So what happens if the nurses strike, and how will that impact patients? Coming up tonight at 5, our Tim Pham talked to the hospital and the nurses to get some answers. Former Defense Secretary and Pullman native General James Mattis is in Spokane tonight for a Washington Policy Center event. It's happening at the Davenport Grand at 7 o'clock tonight. While it's not exactly clear what he's set to talk about, Mattis recently made jokes about President Donald Trump and how he once called him an overrated general. Mattis's resignation letter from last December said he stepped down from his cabinet position after a disagreement with the president over the withdrawal of troops from Syria and Afghanistan. President Donald Trump is calling on congressional Republicans to push back against the Democrat-led impeachment inquiry. And today, Senate Republicans introduced a resolution condemning House Democrats for conducting closed-door depositions as part of the inquiry. House Republicans staged a protest yesterday, entering the secure briefing room where the interviews are happening. They refused to leave for several hours.
What are they trying to hide from the American people that they won't allow voting members of Congress to hear what's going on in that room?
Democrats say the closed-door hearings are standard and necessary to keep witnesses from coordinating their testimony. Reports say they could begin public hearings as soon as mid-November. Meanwhile, congressional investigators are looking at whether President Trump may have pressured Ukraine's new president even before he was sworn in. Former President Jimmy Carter was released from the hospital today after breaking his pelvis in a fall at his home earlier this week. The Carter Center says he is looking forward to recuperating at his home in Georgia. They say the 95-year-old former president is in good spirits and described his injury as a minor fracture. Well, losing a loved one is hard, but a Coeur d'Alene woman is making it easier to say goodbye. In tonight's Inland North Best segment, KREM 2's Nicole Hernandez watched her make jewelry to help people grieve.
This is Keith.
Keith's family sent his ashes here.
Keith came from Arizona to see me.
Now artist Twyla Jensen is using his cremains to make jewelry that his family can remember him by. It's a pretty simple process, but for Twyla, it's an emotional one.
I know that somebody else lost someone too. And I know that there's pain involved with that.
She knows that feeling all too well. 14 months ago, Twyla lost her dad.
You can tell he's goofing off, because that's what he did. My sister was going to buy a little silver deal that you pour the ashes into. And I said, well, they could fall out of that.
So she created this resin pendant with her father's cremains set inside.
I think he would be ultimately surprised, too, that we want to wear his ashes. Oh, man, you know. But he was awesome. It's helping me heal from the loss of my dad, and it's also helping them heal, I believe.
She's talking about her customers, people like Keith's family who loved Twyla's unique way of remembering loved ones.
Always. I can just see myself doing it all day, every day. Yeah.
It's her way of helping others while healing from her dad's death.
If you've not been through that, you don't realize how big of a deal it is, because they've always been there your whole life. So, here I go again. I just think this is what has come out of that, is something to help people and me. So,
in Coeur d'Alene, Nicole Hernandez, KREM 2 News.
And as we start to think about the weekend, you might be